everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Amanda N, and today I wanted to talk about the Sallie house. I watch a bit of BuzzFeed Unsolved from time to time, and in case you didn't know, they just finished up their last season. The first and last episodes, and potentially their most famous ones, took place in the Sallie house. I wanted to see how true the hauntings were, if the truth was stretched here. So if you haven't watched those episodes, I do recommend you do so for a bit of context, but if not, that's alright too. We're gonna go over everything together. So now, let's get right into it. The Sallie house was built in the mid-1800s for the Finney family. Michael Finney died in the home in 1872, and his daughter, Agnes, moved in 1906. Her husband, William, died there in 1918, and in 1939, so did Agnes. For years, families moved in and out without incident until 1992, when the new owners, the Pickmans, experienced hauntings. Disconnected calls were really common, wind-up toys played on their own, lights that the owners thought they turned off stayed on, you name it. A teddy bear even spun around in front of their eyes, and scratches were found on the husband. In October 1993, Sallie herself was spotted. She was translucent, but when she was later seen, she wasn't a human little girl, but a part animal, part human with worms running through her. As Ryan in the BuzzFeed Unsolved episode puts it, yeah, she was a demon. But the stories about who Sallie is or maybe seem pretty terrifying. Some sources say she died there in the 1800s after a botched appendicitis surgery. The Sallie house website itself describes it as, originally built at the turn of the century, this house became the residence of an Atchison physician. The front served as an office space and examination rooms, while the doctor and his family lived upstairs. One day, a frantic mother arrived carrying her 6-year-old daughter, Sallie. The child had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis and knew there was no time to delay surgery. Believing the appendix would soon burst, the doctor began cutting Sallie before the anesthesia took full effect. Sallie's scream suddenly stopped and she grew pale and limp. She died on the operating table, her last memories of a man whom she believed was torturing her. There's multiple clips of other YouTubers with spirit boxes and cameras having strange experiences in the home and hearing voices. Others have called it the most haunted place you can visit, and as far as I can tell, that seems to be because of Sallie herself. Not only is she the classic terrifying little girl in a white dress, but particularly vicious too. But here's the really weird part for me personally. Why hasn't she been brought up before now? If Sallie is such a massive threat, and this is one of the most haunted places in the US, how come it took over 100 years for people to start noticing it? How come people were able to enter into this house without incident? I did a little bit more digging, and I was able to find a podcast from Atchison Public Library, and the episode Haunted Atchison actually revealed a ton of these details. I highly recommend listening to it. It is so fascinating. Sorry for the jingling, that's my dog. Anyway, according to the host, it all started with classic things. Cold spots, blurred photos, things of that nature. Deborah Pickman, the one who purchased the home in 1992 with her husband, has even published a book about her experience. She spoke with a psychic over the phone to diagnose what was happening in her home and what kind of ghost was there. Now, Deborah was, and I'd assume still is, very open to the idea of ghosts. But personally, no matter how open to that you are, I would be very skeptical of a psychic that can tell you what's happening over the phone and who exactly is there. Deborah welcomed the ghost, though, and even saw it as a protector for her child. Apparently, she was really scared of SIDS at the time and figured that this would somehow help, as they had just gotten a nursery, just gotten a new baby, all those things, whereas Tony was experiencing this supposedly violent side, and he was being scratched by the ghost. The psychic was the one who told them that, hey, the ghost in your house is named Sallie, and from there on, Tony saw the ghost, a small white girl, and tells the story that we've come to know is born. Since there's no record of any Sallie living in the house, this story of a young girl dying there from surgery could make sense. It doesn't seem like too much of a stretch, right? Well, here's the thing. There was a Sallie around that era when the surgeon lived there. There was a Sallie in town, but she was an adult African-American woman, not a little white girl that Tony saw. Now, a doctor did live there. This was Finney's son, Charles. Not only was he a doctor, but he actually did ice skating contests while dressed as a woman, called himself Miss Colby of Baltimore, and he was even the mayor of Atkinson. So did Charles Finney, who ice skated in drag and ran the town, accidentally kill a little girl during surgery? I mean, it's possible, but there's simply no record of this whatsoever. And if the only other Sallie in the town was an African-American adult woman, then is it even possible? Personally, I'd be really curious to see if there were any other Sallies in the area, if there were any other young Sallies in neighboring towns. It definitely seems possible. It seems like Sallie might have been a common name at the time, but if there was another physician closer to that Sallie, wouldn't the mother have gone there if it was such an emergency? So that's just something to think about, but now some argue that Sallie is the embodiment of all things negative that have happened there in demon form. There are some really horrific things that have actually happened nearby. Charles' brother built a home next door to the Sallie house, deeded it to a woman who committed murder and then endgamed herself with her child. A murder S-word, the S-word I can't say here on YouTube. Yet again though, this doesn't really relate to Sallie specifically. Tony and Deborah claim the spirit has haunted them, and while there could be something to that, there's no evidence whatsoever to validate the story of Sallie as a little girl. I do trust the opinion of those on the podcast, as they live in that area and were able to look through public record. It's possible that we just might not know the whole story of Sallie, and it doesn't seem like we ever will, but I found this really fascinating to think that one of the most haunted places in the States wasn't haunted until the 90s when the Pickmans said it was, and even then we don't have a record of any of these things happening there. I just found it interesting, especially because, hey, BuzzFeed Unsolved just did their last Sallie House episode. Feel free to check out that podcast or the BuzzFeed Unsolved episode. I'm actually going to link both of those because those are the two big sources I used here, and I think it's really interesting to see the comparison between the two. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Be sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button. Bye!